In this era of rising prices and declining value, there are those who would say that a single penny is worthless, a piece of zinc and copper obsolete in the modern age. But over the past 40 years, people in Rapid City have proven a penny can do amazing things. A 1-penny sales tax that has built swimming pools and ice arenas, public parks, and wide open spaces. It helped Rapid City recover from a devastating flood and forge a new future of optimism and hope. And it all began with this building, the Rushmore Plaza Civic Center. And it all began in the power of a penny. Hello everybody, I'm Shad Olson. Thank you for joining us for this News Center 1 special presentation on the $180 million Civic Center expansion project. In just the next few days, Rapid City voters will head to the polls to decide what will be not just the next chapter for this historic facility, but in the life of our community itself. Over the years, this building has played host to former presidents and first ladies, world dignitaries, sporting events of every shape, size, and description, and of course, the biggest and most famous names in the history of entertainment. Former Pakistani Prime Minister Benazir Bhutto was here just weeks prior to her assassination in her home country. And the king of rock and roll himself, Elvis Presley, played the very first concert in this very room, and one of the final performances over his illustrious career. But none of that would have been possible without the vision and inspiration of a former mayor by the name of Don Barnett, who believed that this building would be the touchstone and centerpiece of the community, not just for 40 years, but for 40 years beyond that as well. What you're about to learn over the next 30 minutes are the dimensions and the information you need to make an intelligent decision at the polls, and why the next 40 years could be even greater than the 40 years we've seen before.
On behalf of the citizens of Rapid City and the community, welcome to Rapid City.
Thank you. You're very nice. Thank you.
The whole Civic Center started with a file on my desk that a previous mayor had left for me, and 5 years later Elvis Presley was here for one of the last shows during his life.
But on a certain legendary evening long ago, one of Elvis Presley's final concerts would become Rapid City's first.
Bye, fellas. Thank you.
The first performance ever held at the brand new Rapid City Civic Center, June 21st, 1977.
Here it is.
4 decades later, the king is long gone. But inside the building that Elvis helped make famous walks a man that helped make the building.
Well, I see all the first-class seating up here and the permanent seats. It's just wonderful.
And an arena that still bears his name.
And then my grandson said, "Grandpa, is that you on the wall up here?" And I said, "Yeah, Jared, it's me. It's me. It happened in 2002. And he was so proud of his grandpa.
Without former Mayor Don Barnett, it's fair to say there might not even be a Civic Center.
Chicago.
And no walk along Memory Lane.
Rainy day in the park. Seems like the 4th of July, huh? When my kids were much younger, we'd drive into town and I'd head for the Civic Center and my daughters would say, "Uh-oh, Dad's gonna drive by it again. I'll show you the stripes on my back someday."
Impossible as it seems, in 1972, the idea of a civic center wasn't exactly publicly embraced.
And one of the members of the church said, "Hey, have you driven by Barnett's Folly lately?" And my friend said, "What's that?" "Oh, that's that Civic Center down there. It's a white elephant. It won't have any business." Well, I guess I got the last laugh. I don't think it's a folly. And it was paid for in 8 years. So they couldn't say that I was a Democrat that left the city with an eternity of debt.
Now, with a 40-year-old facility facing massive upgrades to comply with federal disability law, Barnett hopes that similar vision will triumph again.
When you travel from Rapid City to Sturgis, it's wall-to-wall people now. And this facility really does serve the needs for about 150,000 people.
Lest a building that's part of memories for so many become only faded legend of what used to be.
And if anything now, this arena is much too small. The stock show and the rodeo could be larger, and it could bring more visitors who would stay in Rapid City for a longer period of time.
And we're joined now by another Rapid City mayor, this time the current mayor of Rapid City, Sam Quaker. Sam, thank you for joining us for this special presentation.
Thanks for having me.
We've just been listening to Don Barnett, his inspiration and his vision at the inception and the very beginning of this Rushmore Plaza Civic Center facility. He's given us his thoughts on what this building has meant in the lives of people in Rapid City. Just your reflections on what the Civic Center means to this town.
Well, this is where we've gathered. This is where we celebrate. This is where we've grieved. You know, originally when Mayor Barnett and his council had a vision in the early 70s, it was a piece of flood-ravaged ground, and now look at what we have.
It is an amazing facility, and I know we're going to get into the economic impact that this building has, even in its present form. That's an amazing footprint. What I'd like to do in these next couple of minutes is to have you, as Mayor of Rapid City, be able to respond to and potentially dispel some of the misconceptions that there might be surrounding this project and the $180 million price tag to bring us into the new expansion phase. Are there misconceptions you think about this project?
I think the most common misconception is that this will impact our property taxes and that this would create an ongoing property tax burden for our citizens, and that couldn't be further from the truth.
And that fear over a property tax increase is just one of 3 misconceptions Mayor Quaker wants to address. No property taxes will be used to pay for the expansion project, and no new taxes of any kind will be levied. Only the already existing 1-penny sales tax known as the Vision Fund will be used. Again, the power of the penny. In fact, it's more likely, proponents say, not approving the expansion will lead to a rise in property tax.
I could almost promise you that if this building is not brought up to speed, is not expanded, if we don't remain relevant in the industry, our property taxes are going to go up. That is just a given because we are not going to have nearly as many sales tax coming in.
Julie Schmitz-Jensen of Rapid City Convention and Visitors Bureau says not approving the expansion will lead to a decline in sales tax revenue over time, shrinking the overall tax base and putting pressure on property tax as one option to make up for any budget shortfall in local government.
We cannot forget that visitor dollars are huge in this city, and we need to give them a reason to come here. The leisure market's coming, but our convention industry has taken we're losing convention share. And if we do not continue those sales dollars coming in, your property taxes are just going to have to go up.
Setting the record straight, no new taxes needed for the $180 million expansion.
The reality is the funding source for the Civic Center has always been sales tax. And in the early 1970s, the Mayor Barnett and the City Council had a vision, and they took it to the people, and it was to put in a 1-penny sales tax to help fund the Barnett Arena and the entire Civic Center complex. That was paid off in 1992, and then since that time we've had half of that penny go to capital improvements of streets, drainage, and other infrastructure, and then the other half has formed the Vision Fund program, which previously was known as the 2012 program.
Now, as we address this $180 million expansion project, one of the misconceptions, Mayor Sam, that I've heard from people is that if we don't decide to do, for lack of a better term, the whole enchilada in terms of the larger expansion, that we're going to be spending only maybe a couple $100,000 to meet the ADA requirements and address some of the disability deficiencies that exist in this facility currently. That's simply not true.
The 2-year-old number that we have is approximately $72 million to address the Americans with Disabilities Act compliance issues in this arena. And I think it's important to recognize that what we're building is not an arena per se, it is a convention center that will allow logistically us to be able to hold multiple events at the same time. It will grant unfettered access for people with disabilities, and it also gives us an opportunity to expand our parking, which is something that we've needed to do for some time.
And all of that, we've already mentioned the $64 million impact, the economic impact that the facility has, even in its present form. And estimates are, experts tell us that we're going to add another $180 million per year if we make the necessary expansion.
And I believe that those are conservative estimates. You know, if you look at the original Barnett Arena, at the time that it was built, people didn't realize how wildly successful it would be. And the leaders at that time had a vision, and they built it for 1990. They did. And then in 1990, it became non-compliant, and now we have an arena that's 24 years out of compliance, and it's time to address these very serious issues regarding access.
And what you're about to see right here on News Center 1 as we continue our special presentation regarding the $180 million expansion project is what exactly hangs in the balance if those needs are not met. I'm holding in my hand right here a lawsuit that is still in existence against the City of Rapid City regarding those disability deficiencies and violations of the Americans with Disabilities Act. As you've already heard, it could cost $72 million just to address those deficiencies alone. And what you're about to see right now is what could be waiting for us if we decide to undertake the larger and more inspiring project, the entire $180 million expansion to this facility. It is the first day of summer 2005. A massive crowd fills the Civic Center arena, pleading the case of Ellsworth Air Force Base and the more than $400 million in revenue generated each year. The base slated for closure by the Department of Defense.
Ladies and gentlemen, the commissioners from the Base Realignment and Closure Commission.
In the end, that show of support and the work of local and state leaders saved Ellsworth from closure and saved tens of thousands of area jobs. An explosion of public response, realizing the economic catastrophe that had to be avoided. What you may not realize is that the building where that crucial meeting was held represents a similarly massive impact for Rapid City, ranking right behind Ellsworth Air Force Base in economic activity generated.
Initially, some people thought we'd been too optimistic, that we'd never use the arena. We might fill it up for basketball tournaments, but that would be about all. And within 1 year, all of that doubt went away.
Bringing visitors and families to town where they spend their money on gas, food, lodging, and entertainment.
They bring a lot of money. They come, they spend that money, they bring their families, and we estimate they spend about $180 per day.
Each year, a total of $130 million in economic benefit from conventions alone. Even more for sporting events, concerts, hockey games, and cultural expos.
This building is an economic engine in Rapid City. It served an amazing purpose for the last 25, 30 years.
And if anything now, this arena is much too small. The stock show and the rodeo could be larger.
And experts tell us that the expansion plans will add $180 million in economic activity to an already massive footprint, an amount equaling the price paid to expand the building in only the first year of operation.
And like I told you before, the debt was paid off in 8 years. And then we've expanded and made it better, and that's what you should do with an investment like this. That's called business.
Contrast that with what happens if voters reject the expansion, choosing instead to simply address the modifications needed to meet the Americans with Disabilities deficiencies, effectively closing the arena for 3 years of renovation, and still spending $72 million only to have a 1970s-era building still losing competitiveness in attracting regional events.
And we used to be competing against huge cities for major conventions. I was on the road all the time in the 80s and 90s, bidding against Kansas City and bidding against Minneapolis and Denver. We're not doing that anymore because our building isn't flexible enough and it isn't healthy enough to bid on those conventions anymore.
And we're back as we continue this special presentation of News Center 1 discussing the $180 million Civic Center expansion project and the public vote that's now pending for March 10th right here in Rapid City. And I'm joined, as you can see, by Rapid City Mayor Sam Quaker. And Sam, as we continue our conversation, one of the overriding thoughts and as we continue to address some of the misconceptions and concerns on the part of the public regarding this project, I've heard the terminology white elephant. I've heard people talk about why do we need to build the arena so big? Why does the project itself need to be so large? Can you address that?
I have been asked by people who, people have said to me, well, is it too big? And my answer is, well, of course it's too big. If we're going to build it for 2014, then we shouldn't be building it.
Another misconception, Quaker says, is that the redesigned Barnett Arena will be too large for Rapid City's needs.
Yeah, I've heard that a lot too. A lot of people have equated this venue to 19,000 seats for concerts, and is that too big for Rapid City?
Project critics seem almost fixated on the total capacity of the arena expansion as a number too large for Rapid City's population, a total of 19,000 seats.
And the question in that, and once in a great while, maybe that's not too big for Rapid City. We could maybe attract a concert of 19, but this room is not based, and the whole idea and premise of this design is not based on 19,000 seats for a concert.
Civic Center Executive Director Craig Baltzer says the new arena will include 10,500 permanent seats, with retractable seating and floor space offering flexibility for events of varying size.
I would think realistically what we'd be doing is expanding ourselves to be maybe 14,000, 15,000 seats for a concert when needed. But it does give us also the ability to even do 9,000 or 10,000, which we currently can't do.
But perhaps the greatest argument for the full expansion and the larger arena size, as Mayor Quaker puts it, a realization we're building not for today, but for tomorrow.
We have a responsibility to the future generations in Rapid City to build this for 2 or 3 generations out, and that's what this vision is all about.
It's interesting to me that that's exactly the same kind of criticism that was lofted at Don Barnett when he was mayor back in the 70s, and they were even talking about building this facility. Exactly that line of thinking and exactly that line of logic was used by critics of this project who would have been happy to derail this from ever happening at all. So we're hearing the same things even now 40 years later.
Well, and that's one of the reasons why Mayor Barnett was so bound and determined to take this to a public vote, because he wanted to earn the support of the people of the community at that time and to ensure that it had the support of the people going forward. And that's one of the reasons why the council and I and so many other people have joined in to encourage a public vote for this important project.
And one of the things that we need to talk about as well is what happens if the $180 million project, what happens if we don't undertake the entirety of that expansion?
Well, it isn't overly dramatic to say that if we don't do anything, we can just tape it up with yellow tape and close it up, because we have a Justice Department settlement that the city has signed that gives us 30 months from the date that Washington signs it to become compliant with the Americans with Disabilities Act. We have a responsibility to address these issues, and I think people need to recognize that we have a number of events that use this arena and depend on this arena every year. We have the Lakota Nations Invitational, the Powwow, the Black Hills Stock Show. These are huge events for our community, and trying to remodel the Barnett Arena, the $72 million in fixes that was discussed earlier, you can't just snap your fingers and remodel it. It requires 2 to 3 years of downtime. Where are you going to put these events?
In fact, in the hyper-competitive world of regional event planning and convention scheduling, Rapid City leaders say it's very likely the city of Sioux Falls will work heavily to attract and keep the largest events on the Civic Center calendar.
What's going to happen to the LNI? What's going to happen to the Black Hills Stock Show and Rodeo? I would guess we've got Sioux Falls people loving this debate right now.
Simply closing the Barnett Arena for 3 years for a $72 million renovation without the $180 million expansion would leave the building the most vulnerable of all options.
I guess that would be an option, but you're just taking an old building and losing seats and putting a Band-Aid on it. But we're going to lose that building, that part of the Civic Center, for 3 years as we do that. And what is going to happen to our annual events that bring in so much money to Rapid City?
Imagine losing the Black Hills Stock Show, the Lakota Nation's Invitational, or the Black Hills Powwow, each responsible for tens of millions of dollars in economic impact, likely never to have those return to Rapid City.
We're going to have all of those events displaced for a minimum of 2 to 3 years. And I'm almost positive Sioux Falls is just licking their chops, waiting for us to make the wrong decision on this.
The Pennington County Event Center isn't large enough to hold these events. Some of these other events could perhaps be moved. We already know that we're facing the loss of some South Dakota High School Athletic Association events, and so we need to address these issues. And the way that this project is set up in terms of the phasing, the project would start on the west end with the west end of the new arena being built, and then it would work its way towards the east, finish that off. It could be used, and then we would tackle into the Barnett, because there are two valuable components of this facility of the Barnett Arena. One is the floor, and the other is the sides, the superstructure. The roof, the girders don't have the weight-bearing capacity anymore. There's all kinds of co-compliance issues that need to be addressed. So what happens if we don't proceed? Well, we need to do something, and what we know now is that the bell has been rung, and we are going to move forward with something. So the details of this expansion still need to be worked out, but the bottom line is the new convention center would be fully Americans with Disabilities Act compliant, and that's what started this whole conversation.
So as you can see, as we take a look at this project and the $180 million expansion project, what we're really trying to do, and what you've heard Mayor Sam say, is we're trying to protect investments that have been already been made in terms of the planning stages for this facility, and number two, for protecting the investment that's represented by the structure that you see every day as you drive by in Rapid City. Securing this facility and securing that investment for future generations is why this vote on March 10th means that the future is now. We continue this special presentation on the $180 million Civic Center expansion project. Rapid City Mayor Sam Quaker, now joined by former City Council member and current member of the Rapid City School Board, Dave Davis. Dave, thank you for being here.
Thank you, Shad.
Explain, and the mayor's already had his opportunity to tell us about the importance of this project. I know this is near and dear to your heart as well. Just your thoughts.
Well, I think we all understand that this is the center of our community. This is what, if we didn't have it, just take it in reverse. If we didn't have this Civic Center for the last 35 years, imagine how little Rapid City would be. And I don't mean that just in size, but in so many different aspects.
We've talked a lot about economic impact. It's very hard, I think, to even separate this discussion in any way, shape, or fashion from the importance of what that contribution on a yearly basis is going to mean for the economy and for the thriving economy that we expect and hope this region will continue into future decades. Is there any way to underestimate that kind of contribution on the life of a facility?
So it's not really a matter of under or overestimating. It's trying to really get your arms around all the things that it impacts. A prime example of this, with the Civic Center Future Planning Committee a couple of years ago, we had the opportunity to put together a youth group that came together and actually did a full series, a survey. They surveyed over 400 high school students. And their biggest thing, although their response was almost the same as the adult group, the largest thing they came back with was the impact that this facility and the future of this facility has on people like themselves coming back to Rapid City, living here, working here, and raising their families. And also the impact of employers finding this to be a place. This is the core, it's the center, and everything else radiates out from it.
When people go to the polls, what do you hope that they take with them in their minds and hearts?
Well, I hope that most of all they look at what those kids said to us. You see, they're the ones that are actually going to use it. This thing will be around a lot longer than I will, but those kids are going to be the end users. They certainly understand it's easy to say no. It's easy to be a defeatist. It's very difficult to be a visionary. And I think the people that have brought this thing forward have been visionaries, and I compliment the mayor and all the others that are working towards this. We need to push this, and we need to vote yes.
And it's an essence of optimism, I think, that would surround the approval of this project and a vision of believing that the best is only to come, not just for this facility, but for Rapid City as well. We'd like you to take a look now at the virtual tour of what the plans and the blueprints look like for this $180 million expansion project right here on News Center 1.
On behalf of the citizens of Rapid City and the community, welcome to Rapid City.
Primarily back in 1972, they definitely wanted to have the state basketball tournaments here. Well, that has come true. For the last 40 years, we've had about 2 tournaments a year here in Rapid City, and we brought statewide basketball competition to Rapid City.
This is not about build it and they will come, but I would like to say this: if you don't build it, then they're not going to come.
What is the quality of life in that city, and what kind of events do they have in that city, and how healthy is that city in terms of entertainment and things to see and do?
Gonna run it 45, 50, 45, 40, down the far sideline. Gonna go all the way for the touchdown.
We will build another sporting arena for trade shows and entertainment venues, and hopefully it will be again the biggest place in South Dakota. And I think with a new feature on the Civic Center down here, it will grow faster and life will be richer, and everything in western South Dakota will be more abundant.
And so there you have it, a look inside some of the details and the planning and the blueprinting of what that facility is actually going to look like. And Mayor Sam Quaker, in just our final few moments together, voters going to the polls in just a matter of days to decide this issue. What are your final thoughts about this chapter and where we find ourselves in the history of Rapid City?
Well, Rapid City has been a community that's always shown vision, and you know, there's a great story. You can find it down at the library and on the Knowledge Network, that in 1945 we were one of 5 finalists for the United Nations, and at that time the airport was where North Middle School is now. So we have a community that thinks big. We thought big back then, we thought big in the early 70s, and we are asking the people of our community to make less of a leap of faith than what they did in the early 1970s. We're asking them to invest in the future of our community and the future of our region.
I think that over the course of our conversation today, I think that the compelling piece of the portion of conversation that we've had about that ADA compliance is that $72 million essentially that we have to spend just in order to get the facility where it needs to be in terms of that compliance with that civil rights legislation. The remainder of that, and again, everything that we're talking about is going to be paid for with an existing tax. No new taxes for this project. We're correct about that?
We are, and it's important to know that, you know, the Vision Fund, which was originally formed for the Civic Center, the Vision Fund would be going back to its original purpose for a while, and it would help build this facility. And the other half of that original penny would still continue to go to our capital improvements program, and that would not be touched. Streets would continue to be fixed. We are doing more street and drainage improvements now than we have in many, many years, so we're working on keeping up with that too. It's important to remember that this is a piece of vital infrastructure for our community. This is not a nice to have. Over the last 40 years, we have shown that this facility is a must-have for our community, and we've got to revitalize it or we end up losing it.
The vote is March 10th. You've been watching a special presentation right here on News Center 1 regarding the Civic Center expansion project, one that will mean 10,500 seats in an arena, 19,000 seats for total capacity and convention floor space right here. Mayor Sam, thank you for being here today.
Thank you very much.
And so, in the same way the building began, project proponents hope that voters will once again capture a vision for what the future can be, harnessing the power of a penny to give new life to a building that has given the people of Rapid City so much happiness over so many years. Thanks for watching this News Center 1 special presentation on the $180 million Civic Center expansion project. If you missed part or all of this broadcast, it can be seen again right here on News Center 1. Check our website for time and availability. Or you can watch the entirety of the broadcast at our website at newscenter1.tv. I'm Shad Olson. Thanks for watching this special News Center 1 presentation.